Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Move with the Military, the podcast. I have the Miss Leah Morehart with Leah Morehart Financial Services. How are you, my dear?
Wonderful. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. So, for those of you that don't know Leah, Leah is a military wife, a mom, and money game educator and coach with 10 plus years in the financial services realm. Leah helps families simplify money, save more, protect what matters, crush debt, and build lasting relationships or an independence.
Yes. Yes.
Today we're going to talk about budgeting. And it seems like such a simple concept. I think it's a word that gets thrown around a lot. Budget, do you have a budget? So I think for some people, it kind of feels like a bad word because it's like, what, yeah, I have a budget. But do you, so why are people like scared of budget though, and the concept around it, do you think?
I think because the word budget kind of puts you feel limited. I think a lot of people are like, oh, that's going to limit. And majority of us are very naive and we think we know where our money goes. So I hear the phrases all the time of like, we don't eat out often. I don't buy any extra for myself. We're living paycheck to paycheck. And, you know, I'm like, well, have you written down a budget? And like, oh, I have a budget. And sadly, like, do you? But I think the reason it's such like a dirty word or people don't like it is because it feels restrictive or limited, or that you're questioning their use of their money. Like it's almost like they feel attacked to some degree. Like, do you have a budget? I don't need a budget, because they think they know where their money's going. But the big question is, do you? Do you know where your money's going?
Right. Well, and I think, sitting down and really looking at where it's truly going, itemizing it out, um, it is a huge eye opener to a lot of people. And that's not even necessarily budgeting, right? That's just looking at where your money's going. So what would you say the first step is if someone wants to start budgeting the right way?
The first step would be actually doing a spending audit. And I actually have a worksheet I give to my clients, kind of gives them a guide of how to actually do an audit. And I know we mentioned it briefly on our last episode. So if you
Mhm.
haven't caught that episode, go back, catch it a minute. But, a spending audit is kind of really assessing where the money's going. And hey, for fun and giggles, go ahead and get a budget worksheet, put in what you think goes into each category, what you think you're spending, and then actually do an audit and see how close you are. And majority of people I see are not so much accurate. They think they know where their money's going, but then they go, it's again, the audit is getting the last 2 months of your bank statements, or if you use credit cards to get your reward points, get those statements, go line by line and put each dollar that you're spending into that category that it goes into. And I kind of look at like there's essentials and then there's sub essentials and then you've got like your fun money, there's different categories and I'm happy to share that worksheet with anybody that needs it. But just kind of looking at itemize, okay, this goes in this category, this goes in this category, and then do the total and then look at the average of the last 2 months to really see how you're budgeting the stuff. And it's an eye opener. It's an eye opener, but you
You
need
want
to
to
do
talk about
that.
self-awareness, right? Oh,
Exactly. But you need that before you can actually get a real idea of how much can I afford to spend in this area or that area to actually make a budget.
sure. Well, I'm definitely going to go through this process. So this is going to be interesting. It's probably not necessarily something that I'm going to be excited about, honestly, because it is. It's
No.
going to accountability on truly where the money is going. So let's say, all right, I go through, I do my audit, right? I see where my money's going. Then what comes next?
So then you want to build your budget. So you've seen how much you're spending. Go ahead and fill in those categories and then, take your income, right? You're going to say, put your money in, and then you're going to see all the money that's going out. And then you're kind of assessing, do I have a shortfall or a surplus? And how big is that surplus? Like how much extra do I have left over? And the reason the audit is so important is because many people, they do this budget thing and they're like, well, this math says I should have $1,000 left over each month, but that's not true. And I'm like,
Oh,
that's why you need to
sure.
do the audit because your
Mm.
ideal budget is not real. So then you do the audit, you do the real budget, the raw numbers, and then you see, is there a shortfall? Like, am I in the negative for income in, money out, or do I have a surplus? And then if it's not where you want it, you can kind of go through and be like, okay, this area we really need to cut back the spending. Like maybe it's the eating out, or maybe we don't need Amazon, Hulu, Prime, Peacock, like all of the services. Maybe we can cut one or two out. Maybe that subscription, I really didn't need it, cancel that, go to the library instead of Audible. The things like then you can actually assess and, if you have a partner or a spouse, you guys can sit down and be like, okay, we really need to start working on that financial house that Leah talked about. We really need to start working on that retirement planning, getting out of debt. We don't have much of a surplus, but we can see we're overspending here. I mean, like, can you believe we spend this much, at the gas station on snacks? I always tell my husband,
Yes.
but
Or
it's like if you know
or the
where you might be
concession
doing a
stand.
little too much, where do I make my cuts and start putting that money in a better spot? So but it's all personalized. Just
So
find where
really
the
on the
money goes.
budget sheet though, you start with, you've got your audit and you know where your money's going, right? You use that audit sheet and then in the budget sheet, you're really just plugging in essentials on that budget sheet. And then looking at, okay, I should, like you said, I should have $1,000 left over, to use that as an example, but we're living paycheck to paycheck. So then we go back to the audit sheet and look at where we're spending on the non-essential items and then start looking at what we can cut back on,
Hmm.
right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, even my budget worksheets I do with the clients in the financial needs analysis, let's put in your entertainment fees. Let's put in your hobby, your memberships. Like put in, I go to, whether it's a gym membership or I'm in a book club and I pay $10, whatever, let's include those to see like, can I keep living the way I'm living? So like truly just seeing, and then that's where maybe those are the things you're going to have to cut if your surplus isn't what it needs to be or you're in a deficit.
Okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
I mean, you've always said that there's not a one size fits all budget. So what does that mean?
Yeah. And that's where the budgeting, it's a customized thing. You guys hear me say over and over, like there's no one size fits all. And also like you can't, I guess the point of that phrase, we'll just kind of backtrack for a second, is that my lifestyle is not the same as your lifestyle. So when you're budgeting, we can go online and Google all these like recommended percentages, like the 80-10-20, 80-20 or the 70-10-20 or all these different numbers like ratios telling you how much of your budget or how much of your money should go towards X, Y, and Z. And
Hmm.
those are guides and they're very good guides. However, Michelle, if my family has, different health needs, then I'm going to need to set more money aside for medical expenses. Or, maybe you have a lot of animals, so your pet care expenses are going to be a little more than mine. Or, you have dietary restrictions. Your grocery bill is going to be more expensive than mine. It's the
Hmm.
things like that. That's why everything should be customized. I mean, like I said, we go by those numbers and the little tables and charts and the percentages, but you can't compare your budget to somebody else's and be like, well, theirs is working for them, but that's not for me. Well, exactly. It's theirs, not yours. It's everybody has different needs, also different lifestyles. Somebody whose kids are all grown and out of the house, they may have a bigger budget for the hobbies than you
Yeah,
do.
because they don't have all the expenses that children come with. So how do you
Right.
help people wrap their head around that and make sure they're budgeting accordingly? When you're looking at maybe someone that has some health issues or they need more medical, like an HSA account,
Yeah.
or like my case, my children with their sports. I want to help them maintain that that lifestyle because it's their passion while they're young. What's the best way for someone to sit down and ensure that they're budgeting properly for those specific sectors within their life?
It's a great question. I think it's just being real with yourself. With that audit, with the priorities, what is your priorities? And that's something that especially spouses and partners, you share your money together. You need to talk about the priorities, what's important to you. And if there is a shortfall, which sadly we see so much these days, I think there was a article recently, new statistic that 70% of Americans right now are getting side hustles, extra jobs, multiple jobs just to make the ends meet. Maybe
Hmm.
that's our lifestyle. Maybe it's a little bit of the cost of living. Maybe it's both. And so my advice or like how I help people with that is just really assessing, okay, we know where your money's going. We know what the budget says. You know you need to make some adjustments. It's all about your priorities. Do you need an additional income? Like, do you need a second job? Is there other options out there for you? Can we, and even like with the budgeting, can we save money in some place that's not something you can really not pay for? Like your home and auto insurance. That's something to check every 6 months for to shop that stuff around
Hmm.
you know, just
Right.
kind of like being more smart, or people who are living paycheck to paycheck and they really don't have much of a surplus, ways to cut money is not just cutting on my hobbies and the fun things, right? Maybe check with your HR manager at your job. Are you withholding so many taxes? Like, do you get a big tax return at the end of the year? This is the
Mm.
biggest one. Like, you get a big tax return at the end of the year. Do you realize what a tax refund is? It's a refund of your own money. You overpaid the government. You gave them a tax or a interest-free loan. So maybe talk to your HR person at your job, change your tax withholdings to put more money in your pocket each paycheck so you can maybe not deny the child the ice cream cone every single month. And yeah, you're not getting that big return, but what do most people do with that big return? They pay off
Blow it.
debts.
Yeah.
Yep, or they buy the new TV, right?
Yeah.
They're paying off debts, buying the new TV. But
They're not investing it.
how much, right, but how much freer would it be to not live so tight, to not live paycheck to paycheck? Put your money back in your pocket so that you can actually use it, steward it better to supply for your family's needs and the lifestyle you guys are wanting. And sure, you don't get a big tax return back, but you've lived a better life over the past year. So just kind of like understanding there are other options and ways to cut money besides just saying, oh, you're to sit on the couch with no TV, no internet. I'm not saying like,
Cancel your cell
yeah,
phone. And I
yeah,
think that's what a lot of people, I would say the majority of people fear when you
that's why
start
that
talking
word's
about a budget.
good.
Like you said in the very beginning, is I don't want to sit down and cut out a bunch of stuff. Well, that's not what it's about. It's really doing a financial health check and wellness check. And how often do you suggest people review their budget or go through the audit? Because things get, things happen. You subscribe
Right.
to something and then you subscribe to a couple. It's like, I get a bill from Apple. I feel like it's pinging me so often. I need to do an audit on my Apple charges. That's for sure.
That's common. I hear that.
Oh my gosh. I'm
Um,
like, what is that one for? Yes, definitely need to do an audit on the Apple charges.
yeah. Your question about like how often should people do it? I said when you first start, I mean, you're looking at the last 2 months anyway. Some people even like to do 3 months because they're like, kind of a quarterly thing. Look at the last quarter. How did you do? And I
Hmm.
say at least every 6 months, maybe, just to kind of check because, like you mentioned, life happens, things change. Also, holiday seasons. Maybe you need to do one now before the holiday season comes. That way, you know your boundaries, you know your guides.
Set a Christmas spending budget because
Yep.
I mean, how many people do you think really truly do that? And then you're financing Christmas on credit cards or foregoing other bills, just going in and knowing exactly how much you have to spend. 100%.
Yeah. That's why I think this time is so critical. I even have been, sending messages to some of my clients like, hey, it's time. It's fall, the holiday season and New Year's coming, especially if they
Hmm.
have investments. Let's check everything before a new year, new tax season. And yeah, like you said, people will finance their Christmas and then they get that tax return and they pay that debt back off. And it's like we're just feeding the system of being the loaner of money. Let's take back some control of our money and be the owners of our money instead of the loaners. That's kind of the
Absolutely.
whole point.
And the interest that you pay. I was thinking the number of people that don't get printed bank statements is the majority, right? And everything's electronic. So, how many people actually go through and balance their checking account? I mean, nobody balances their checkbook because who writes checks anymore? I mean, you have to periodically, depending, but most people, I run into a lot of clients that don't even have checks or checking accounts. They use Zelle or Venmo. It's all electronic. And so you're not truly tracking. And I think that is so pertinent, having the conversation about auditing your spending, especially with the generations that are not right, that are not balancing their statement. It's not really balancing a checkbook, right? But you can still balance your statement and do an audit every month of your account of what's going out. It also helps with fraud, ancillary charges, and so forth. But I don't know how many people are actually doing that anymore.
But and it's so many people when they do this, they're like, I didn't even realize I had all these subscriptions. Like I don't even know when they happened. And they're like, I had to call the bank to get the number. How to even do I even cancel this? Like I don't even know where this came from. And so yeah, like you said, whether that was fraud or just a sleepy click or whatever, when you're scrolling at night and you just don't know those things that you're doing sometimes. And I will say too, in my banking days as a bank teller, when I was a bank teller and then member service stuff, so many people come in because their account overdrew. Well, no, I checked. It said I had $35 in there before I made this transaction. Like, but there's all these things pending.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that stuff happens so much. Then they're like, well, that's not fair because the app said I had $35 when I, you know, charged that. And it's again, if we don't know, you mentioned people don't not balancing a checkbook. If you need to go back to that so you can stay on top of your account so that you don't end up like those customers that would come into the bank and have that overdraft fee because, well, the app said, yeah, but you're not tracking. You just spent, another $50 before the 35 because it is a digital world and we just love the convenience of it, but it can trap you up sometimes if you're not paying attention to where the
Well,
money's
right, if you forget about a previous charge that's not hit your account yet. And I think it is so easy to just keep an Excel spreadsheet. And you don't have to do it forever. If you're just getting started with really understanding, right, your finance, where your
going.
money's going, doing an audit and a budget, I do think that it would be a good practice, don't you, to just
Yeah,
keep a log of all of your spending every time, even or keep a notebook in your car, and every
they have
time you
apps.
swipe. There's apps for that. Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm sure you have resources for them to help them. You're such a wealth of knowledge. I love talking about this. It's something I'm very passionate about as well because they don't, they just don't break down the basics when at any point. And even if they do, even if you learn the basics, life happens, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a situation where you're spending more than you had intended, if it's having, your kids just started sports or you have a health issue. But you always breaking and coming back to the basics. It's very important in a lot of aspects, but with finances is to come back to the basics. And you are such an amazing resource because you're so passionate about helping people with that. I just absolutely love chatting with you on this stuff.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it means a lot because I just want to be real with people. It helps me, the accountability. I know it stings sometimes, but I mean, you want to be successful, you want to have a better life, then you need to take control of where your money is. Simple
100%.
as that.
Well, and a lot of financial advisors, they don't start with the basics. And so people don't, I think people are also scared, or they don't feel like they're adequate enough and in a place where they can actually talk to a financial advisor because they don't have any extra money to invest. But it's not all about that. You have to start with your overall financial health and then get to a point of what does investing look like, because it's different for everybody as well. Not everybody's throwing a bunch of money in the stock market, and maybe
Mhm.
it's utilizing their 401k differently. I mean, those are all the resources. That's your realm. But just regurgitating some of the things you've said.
Yeah. And I think because majority financial advisors, they're more like wealth managers
Correct.
instead of wealth creators. And I'm here to help you create and then manage, and so it's just, and that's not, they're not bad. It's just they're at a different
Different.
level than us. So I'm here to help the general population, majority of the middle income, lower class Americans, which is majority of us. We're normal average people. We don't have 250,000 sitting in the bank. So you got to start with the fundamentals, get control of the money to start building the 250,000, in your savings. So yeah, it just comes back to the basics. You're 100% right.
You've got your tagline there, wealth creator. That's I love it. So if someone has more questions about what we've talked about today, anything else, they um, maybe just want to get started, understand the audit
Yeah.
process a little bit more, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Text me. I'm not a 1-800 number gal. You just text me. Just text the word move, and I'll know you came from the app, that you watch these podcasts, these series. Just let me know, Haley, I'm ready to move, and we'll get you started.
Love it. Well,
And
we'll have a little picture at the end of this that will have all of Leah's contact information. Like she said, it's not an 800 number, it is her direct cell phone number. If you just want some information, and you can just text her, like she said, because a lot of people also, they don't have time, or maybe they just don't want to make that call, right? They're kind of non-committal, but they're on the fence. They can just text you, and you can start a um, non-aggressive conversation with them of what
yep,
they can do to get started.
that would be wonderful. Yep.
All right, folks. Well, as always, thank you, Leah. We'll be circle back around with some more great topics to help people create that financial wealth, and just maybe even start lessen the stress of the paycheck to paycheck. That is huge.
Yep. Here to make money simple and future strong.
Love it. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Leah. We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye bye.